Let's talk about what to avoid doing when negotiating your compensation package. Have you ever gotten off a phone call with a recruiter who offered you a job only to realize you made some really obvious mistakes? I have. It's not a good feeling. None of us is perfect, and the goal of this sprint is to show you what to avoid doing in your compensation negotiation so you don't negotiate against yourself. By the end of this sprint, you'll know what concrete things to avoid doing in your negotiation so you can get what you want and learn from the mistakes of people who came before you, like me. The first thing to avoid doing in your negotiation is giving a range for your salary. I'll tell you an embarrassing but true story from my own experience. I got on the phone with my recruiter who offered me my first Scrum Master job. She asked me, "So Kelly, what's the range you're looking for?" I got an uncomfortable feeling in my gut, but I ignored it and gave her my range. She promptly offered me the bottom of my range. I ended up kicking myself, but feeling like I didn't have an out. So if the recruiter asks you, "What's your range?" don't give them a range. Instead, give them the number at the top of your range, and then say, "That's the number I'm looking for in salary compensation." You can always come down from there, but take my story as a learning experience and don't negotiate against yourself. The next thing to avoid is going in unprepared. Just don't do it. Do prepare in advance. Get clear on what you want and have a list of talking points ready for why you should get those things. Include your skill list, certifications, years working, and anything else you feel would be relevant. Another thing to avoid is talking about personal details, like the amount you need for your rent, mortgage, or childcare. Your recruiter doesn't have a way to account for those types of things since they differ from person to person. And you could run the risk of being perceived as unprofessional. Remember, how we advance in our careers comes not from how we perceive ourselves, but from how others perceive us. Next, avoid making premature judgments. Let's think back for a minute to the story about the two kids in the orange. If you're like most people, you may have assumed that both kids wanted to eat the orange. I did the first time I heard the story. So you might not have realized that one kid wanted to use the peel to bake a cake. So the lesson on what to avoid from that story is, don't make premature judgments. Don't assume there's a single answer or one right answer. There usually isn't. In fact, there could be multiple right answers that meet different needs, whether they're your needs or the needs of the recruiter or the hiring manager or the organization. For example, maybe your recruiter isn't willing to budge on salary, but she's more than happy to give you more stock options, bonuses, or vacation days. So don't rule anything out. Scrum Masters have successfully explored all of those options, including me. The next what to avoid item is negotiating over email. Don't even think about it. Why? You want to make it a verbal conversation because a lot of your compensation negotiation hinges on relationship building and creating a win-win for both sides. Making the conversation verbal versus email makes creating that win-win a lot easier. Now it's your turn. Make your own list on what to avoid in your negotiation. Use ideas from this sprint, but make sure your list is relevant to you personally. That way, you'll go into your negotiation proactively prepared. The goal of this sprint was to show you what to avoid doing in your negotiation so you don't negotiate against yourself. By now, you should know what concrete things to avoid doing in your negotiation so you can benefit from the mistakes of the people who came before you and avoid doing them yourself.